Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change someone's entire life. But what if your little act of kindness ended up saving someone who had already given up? This is one of those stories. A story about how one simple moment, one kind gesture, changed two lives forever. It was a cold winter morning in the city. The streets were quiet, just the sound of wind brushing through empty alleys. David, a young man in his late 20s, walked to work with his head down, lost in thought. He wasn't sad, just tired. Tired of the same routine. Tired of chasing deadlines. Tired of feeling invisible. Every morning, he passed the same old street corner. There sat an old man, thin, with a worn-out coat, a small cardboard sign, and a silent look in his eyes. He never begged loudly. He never spoke much, just sat there with a calm sadness. For months, David had seen him but never stopped. He always told himself, maybe next time, but that morning something felt different. Maybe it was the loneliness in the air, or the way the man shivered, holding his empty coffee cup. David stopped. He looked at the man and said softly, "Hey, sir, you want some coffee?" The man slowly looked up. His voice was low. "That would be nice, son." David smiled. He ran across the street, bought a hot cup of coffee and a sandwich, and handed it to him. The old man's hands trembled as he took it. "Thank you," he whispered, eyes glistening. "You have no idea what this means to me." David smiled again and replied, "It's just a coffee." But the old man looked into his eyes and said, "No, son. It's not just coffee. It's kindness. And I haven't felt that in a long time." From that day onward, David stopped by that corner every morning. Sometimes he brought breakfast, sometimes just talked. They shared stories. The old man's name was George. George had once been a schoolteacher. He'd lost his wife years ago, then his job, and slowly, life had taken everything from him. He said softly one day, "You never think you'll end up like this, until it happens." David listened, really listened. He didn't have all the answers, but he gave something that mattered more: time. Every morning, even if it was for a few minutes, they talked. About books, about people, about life. And soon, David realized something. Talking to George made him feel better too. It was like two broken pieces helping each other fit again. One morning, David noticed George wasn't there. The corner was empty. He looked around, nothing. The next day, still nothing. A strange worry crept into his chest. He asked a nearby shopkeeper, "Have you seen the old man who sits here?" The shopkeeper shook his head sadly. "Yeah, he collapsed 2 nights ago. The ambulance took him." David froze. Without thinking, he rushed to the nearest hospital. After some searching, he found him weak, pale, lying on a hospital bed. George opened his eyes and smiled faintly. "David, you came?" David sat beside him, eyes wet. "Of course I did. You didn't tell me you were sick." George chuckled weakly. "Didn't want to worry you." He paused, then said something that stuck with David forever. "You know, son, I was going to give up that day you gave me coffee. I was ready to end it all. But then you showed up." David's heart stopped. George continued, "That little cup of coffee told me, there's still kindness in the world. You saved me without even knowing." David felt tears roll down his face. All this time, he thought he was just being nice. He never knew his small act had literally saved a life. Weeks passed. George's health didn't get better. But every evening, David visited him. They laughed, shared memories, and even planned silly dreams, like opening a tiny book cafe together someday. One night, as David sat beside him, George said softly, "I'm not scared anymore. You reminded me what kindness feels like. Promise me one thing." David nodded, holding his hand. "Keep passing it on. Someone out there needs it, just like I did." David couldn't speak. He just nodded, holding back tears. The next morning, George was gone. Weeks turned into weeks, but David couldn't forget those words. Keep passing it on. He decided to do something. He started a small project called One Cup Kindness. Every weekend, He and a few friends went around the city, handing coffee and sandwiches to anyone in need. But more than food, they offered a smile, a conversation, a moment of warmth. Soon, strangers joined in, people from offices, schools, and even local shops. The small act that started with one cup of coffee had become a wave of kindness spreading through the city. And every time David handed someone a cup, he whispered softly, "This one's from George." Sometimes we think we need to do something big to change the world. But the truth is, even a small act of care, a few kind words, a simple smile, can mean everything to someone who's struggling silently. Because kindness is not about money. It's about heart. It's about seeing people when they feel invisible and letting them know they still matter. So, if you ever feel like your kindness doesn't matter, remember this story. You never know who's standing at the edge, waiting for a reason to hold on. A single act, a single moment can change a life forever. And maybe, just maybe, it could also change yours. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Because kindness doesn't fade. It grows when you pass it on. This is Tales That Speak, where every story reminds you your heart still matters.